Hello, everyone. Hi, how are you all doing? I know it's been quite a while since I've been on YouTube. About a year ago, I decided I was going to try and start a little channel, and I made a few videos throughout the summer, and then I ended up kind of just shutting everything down at the end of the summer. As many of you know, I'm currently in university. Getting close to the end, but I'm not quite there yet. And as a full time, so I'm in university as a full time student, and I also work full time. So once school starts, it's pretty difficult for me to try and stay on top of putting out content regularly throughout the school season, school year. So, but I thought, you know what? School's over again for the year. I'm going to give this a try again and seeing how it goes. I'm going to try and be a little more diligent throughout the summer, try and put out some regular content and see how it goes. And if I start to, increase my subscribers and my viewers, then maybe I will continue with it throughout my next semester. Um, so, lots going on for sure. I've had a crazy few months on top of being in school. I've had several of my family members have had some pretty serious medical issues happening and had to been dealing with that. So I've spent a lot of time in hospitals and at medical appointments as well as my regular responsibilities and also finding out myself that I'm dealing with a couple of health issues. Nothing too serious. I've got a bit of apparently a small knee injury that's causing me some issues, but I'm working on improving that and doing physio a few times a week and working on a low impact exercise plan to help in that recovery. And hopefully, I'll be uh, back back to normal soon. But I'll keep you guys updated on that as I go along. And yeah, so tonight I thought I'd start off by talking about something that I've kind of recently came across, or was brought, I would say maybe brought more to my attention when I started listening to a particular podcast a couple weeks ago. And it's certainly not a phenomenon that's not new to me. I've definitely heard of it before. And, I was talking about missing white woman syndrome and, uh, and how the media treats the cases of missing white women quite differently than they treat the cases of people of color and indigenous peoples that go missing. And with May being May 5th was the murdered the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women Day here in Canada. So that has a bit of a, I believe I've spoken about it in my previous videos. I don't know if anyone go back and watch them, but I am First Nations. So these are issues that are pretty close to my heart and issues that I'm always advocating for. Um, what's what I wanted to kind of talk about tonight. Just kind of maybe bring some awareness to people if they're not aware of huge differences in the media coverage, and not just the media coverage. The way police agencies, law enforcement agencies handle these cases as well is quite different depending on um, your race or your status as a person in our society. So, we'll just get right into it. Again, those of you who are back and who have watched my previous streams, um, you know that I do like to keep these to about an hour. I don't like to go too much because, sometimes you get me started on a topic and I don't shut up. I'll talk for hours about it. So I try to limit myself to about an hour. And for those of you that are watching the replay, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the content. Please leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are on the topic itself. Let me know your thoughts on my streaming. Like I said, I'm new to this, so still, you know, I'm not by no means a any kind of content creator professional. Just doing this um, to see where it goes, and because I like to talk about lots of different topics and advocate for certain topics as well. So let's get started here. Let me just find. I've got again a million different tabs open on my computer here, so I'm gonna go to my little sheet where I made my notes. So just again, let you all know here that I believe in education. So I try to back up everything that I'm talking about with evidence. And I will leave any citations of things that I speak about in my description once the stream is over. So let me. Okay, so back to my notes. So, missing white women syndrome relates to the idea that stories about attractive young and white females who go missing are more prevalent in the news to the exclusion of similar stories about other demographics. This phenomenon has come to be known as missing white women syndrome, where news outlets report more extensively on missing persons cases that involve young, conventionally attractive, middle to upper class white women. The consistent way in which these women are portrayed are given rise to research on framing in the news coverage. So, framing occurs when an issue is repeatedly presented in a way that leaves the recipient of the information with a distinct idea of how this issue is supposed to be viewed. So, the framing of missing women is relevant because when the media frames a story, it changes the way an audience feels about the story and the people depicted in it. These are known as framing effects. So, a couple of things that you will always see when um, we're discussing or when we're talking about missing white women syndrome. So, you'll always see these things being described in the media when we're talking about missing white women. Or this is, sorry, the criteria that the media uses when they're talking about a missing white woman. So, they will be young, attractive, middle to upper class. Other things that are kind of non-negotiable, as the study put it that I read, is that she'll be often described as petite, and they kind of label the woman as a princess in her personality. So she must be attractive. Other factors that are taken into account are the sex, age, race, socioeconomic status, and again, the attractiveness. So these are the factors that are used to define whether stories about a missing person will be covered within the media. So just, so some pretty famous missing persons cases that, a lot of people have heard of or were globally covered within the mainstream media, or of course, probably the most recent was Gabby Petito, Lacey Peterson, Natalie Holloway, Laura Hacking, Madeleine McCann, Lisa Irwin, Elizabeth Smart, Jessica Lynch, Chandra Levy, and Kaylee Anthony, right? Those are all names that, unless you're living under a rock, you probably know who those people are, or the names are familiar to you. But during a time when each of these women were missing, there were also, of course, several a thousand other women missing that went missing under the same circumstances that these individuals went missing under, but you never heard about it. And some of those women were Latoya Figueroa, Tamika Houston, Evelyn Fernandez, and Jahasi Shockley. So each of these women went missing under the same or similar circumstances to all of the white women that went missing, and they didn't receive any news coverage at all. And it turns out all of these women were either indigenous or people of color. So I'm just skipping through my notes here. So in regards to talking, so just to show a difference between the media coverage between white women and women of color, there was an analysis done of the coverage of Laci Peterson and Lori Hacking, who were both white women, compared to Tamika Houston and Latoya Figueroa, both black women. So researchers looked at all of the transcripts of television newscasts and the print stories from just two newspapers within the US to compare the coverage of these four women. Out of 738 stories that ran during just the first month of each of these women's disappearance, there were 9 stories total for Houston and Figueroa, and there were 729 stories that were about Laci Peterson and Hacking and Lori Hacking. So a massive difference. Hi, Lex. Hi, good to see you. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm glad you can make it. Sorry. So a major difference between, the coverage between those four women, and it's it could, as someone, if you're on the if you have a family member that's missing, um, and you see statistics like that, that's just got to, it's just absolutely heartbreaking, right? So, when you look at, and then the way the media covers again, uh, the women that are missing. Hi, Marina. Hi, good to see you. Thank you for saying hello. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it. I'm skipping here between tabs, so I might be a minute before I get back to the chat. So not that there's a lot of you, but I do appreciate everyone who's here and watching. Um, so we're talking about how the media covers um, missing women, missing white women, versus how they cover people, women of color, or in Canada, it's we have more of a problem with Indigenous women going missing, and or even men disappearing. Like you hardly hear any coverage of men that disappear. Um, so when they're talking about covering white women, they often portray the person as a girl next door. They show large uh, images with family members. And then if there are any, funerals or memorial services or big media events, there are also large numbers of law enforcement there as well. Whereas when they often talk about women of color or um, Indigenous women, they often frame them as um, addicts, prostitutes, or being homeless or living high risk lifestyles, suggesting that their high risk lifestyles are the reason why they are missing. So, okay. So, another ways the media has created an inequality when talking about women that are missing is that when they are talking about white women, they're talking about put emphasis on their youthfulness, the age that they went missing at, um, When they talk about Black women, however, a study found that ages were only given in about 39% of the stories, as compared to 60% of stories about white women. Exact ages were more likely to be reported for white women, while Black women were more likely just to simply be called a young woman. And that's if we can even get the media to cover the stories at all, because they don't. That's just a fact. They don't cover the stories of missing women. Now, there are several 100,000 people that go missing every year. Now, luckily, in most of the cases, those disappearances are resolved, but there are a large number that aren't resolved. And so I think a large, working hand in hand with the media not covering, uh, missing women of color, or men, or Indigenous women, comes with the law enforcement. Don't bother looking for them. Don't take their disappearances seriously. And that's kind of what kind of brought me here to this topic tonight, because there are a couple of things uh, going on right now that have been brought to light, and that I kind of want to talk about. Yeah, Lex, I know, is that crazy? 700,000. Yeah, the one, I'm just going to find the, I am going to put your comment up there. Yeah, yeah, I know you meant missing. Yeah, um, I'm trying to see the one page I had. Here we go. Yeah, so it says here now, this is an article again, 2024. It says 600,000 people are reported missing in the US every year. 90% of the cases are resolved. Missing persons cases have declined by 50% since 1997. So that's a huge decline. So that's great. But here again, other statistics. Black Americans comprise of 13% of the population and are 31% of missing persons. So they're extremely high risk of going missing. About 34% of the 268,000 women and girls reported missing in the US are Black. Now, that's a stat from 2020. CNN mentioned Gabby Petito's case 346 times during a single week. And at the exact same time, or sorry, and then between the years of 2011 and 2020, over 400 Indigenous women and girls were missing in Wyoming, the exact same state where Gabby Petito disappeared. So, yeah, so there's, and people go missing for different reasons, right? Um, I think the biggest concern, obviously, is that they have become victim to some sort of violence, and that is the reason they've gone missing. Human trafficking is another reason why so many people are going missing. Um, if you're not aware, human trafficking is the biggest business in the world, um, and it is so far outreaching in our society. Like, there's so many different hands, parts of our society in human trafficking. Like, they're, it's our organized crime. There's, governments involved. I hate to say it, but there are governments involved in human trafficking. There are corporations involved. Like, there's just so, like, human trafficking is the number one business in the world. And a lot of people go missing for those reasons. So it's uh but whatever the reason that somebody goes missing, they deserve, I think, a chance to be found, and they're not often given that chance because of their status within society. And law enforcement just, doesn't put in the effort to even find out the circumstances of why or how they went missing in so many cases. Which, again, sorry, so that kind of brings me to, so how I got here to want to talk about this topic tonight is, I started listening to a podcast, and it's an older podcast. Um, it's called Hide and Seek, and I watch a lot of live streaming on YouTube, and I live stream a lot of court cases. And there was a missing persons case that was brought to my attention during a live stream that I was watching of a court case out of Judge Middleton um, in Michigan, and it's the case of Brittany Shank, and she went missing back in 2018. Now, she's a white woman, but she is a white woman who has what people would consider a very low status within our society. One of those people that would be deemed high risk because of the lifestyle that she led. She was a mother of four. She was 23 years old when she went missing. She went missing under very uh, eerie and not and peculiar circumstances. I don't know if any of you have heard of the case. I'm going to guess probably not, but she did lead a very high risk lifestyle. She struggled with addiction. She, I think, at times was probably unhoused. Um, there, it's not someone that, unfortunately would necessarily um, be deemed good enough to uh, be portrayed all over the news to look for her. Oh, so Lex, yeah, you're in Michigan. Okay, so I don't know if I don't know. You don't have to tell me, but if you're in the area of Michigan where she went missing, but I actually I like watching Judge Middleton. He's a Michigan judge, and uh, it got brought up in one of his live streams. So you might hear my dogs barking for a minute because my son just walked in. So if you hear the barking, that's them. I'm actually going to share the screen of um, the information on Brittany Shank. Let me see if I can figure this out. Present, um, share screen. Okay. I'm going to share her page that's on the Charlie Project. So can you guys see that? Let me know if you can see that on the screen or not, because like I said, I'm not great with this. So let me go. So this is her information. So she went missing in 2018 from Sturgis, Michigan. She's right as of right now, she's still alive. She'd be 29 years old, but she was 23 years old. Um, and this is the physical description. Can you guys see the page? Can't see it. Okay. Can you see it now? Okay. I don't know. Oh, there we go. You can see it now, right? Okay. So this is her page from the Charlie Project. Um, oh, let me go back. So, yes, now you can see it. Okay. So I'm just gonna flip over to the tab, so I can read. So is there a physical description of her, and then the circumstances of her disappearance. So she was last seen on November 30th, 2018, in Sturgis, Michigan. She was driving her boyfriend's car, and apparently it kind of ran off the road in some thick fog, and she was with another gentleman who apparently they have not identified, still to this day have not identified who she was with. He ended up taking off. She ended up walking to a house close by, but no shoes. Apparently her feet were bleeding, hands were bleeding, like scrapes on her arms, in a state of confusion, asking for help. There was a 911 call that was released publicly last year, I believe, um, that you could hear her asking for help, but she didn't know where she was. There was the old and she ended up stopping, I think, at the first house, at an elderly gentleman's house. And he tried to help her, but when the 911 dispatch asked for her name, she apparently didn't give the name, or maybe only gave the first name. And then she ended up leaving. And the old man was unable to stop her from leaving because he was elderly and it was late at night. Um, Now, I have not listened to the entire podcast. I just started listening to it, so I think I'm on episode 5. But what has come up so far in the podcast is that apparently there were warrants out for her arrest. So they thought maybe that was when the police asked for her name, that is why she left and didn't stay to wait for help to arrive. But she did call 911 asking for help. But she also appeared to be in the story disoriented state, so maybe that is why, she ended up leaving and apparently walking again to another house close by, and there was a teenage boy home there, and didn't actually end up speaking to that teenage boy, um, but made apparently eye contact with him through a window, and then apparently left, and that was the last time she was seen. So she wasn't reported missing to about 5 days later when her dad was unable to reach her. And from what I've gathered so far in the podcast, or what I've listened to, is that there wasn't really any media attention given to the case. Now, Lex, you might be able to speak more on that since you're in the Michigan area. I don't know if what do you remember a lot of media attention being given to the case at this time when she disappeared? Um, But also, the police did not apparently take this disappearance very seriously because of the lifestyle she lived. Despite the fact that she called 911, she appeared to be disoriented, and that was portrayed to the 911 dispatch. She was injured, um, and even when the car was found abandoned later that evening, and the owner of the car was notified, even then apparently the law enforcement in the area did not take the case very seriously. So, it's really unfortunate that, we're still now, I think 7 years, 7 years later, and this family doesn't have any answers. And, again, regardless of the lifestyle that these people lead, and there are, in this case, again, there's a lot of moving parts within this case. There are a lot of family members that have had, they all suffer from kind of the same afflictions. There's a lot of drug abuse involved here within this community, it seems. A lot of people involved in this girl's life were in jail. She appears to have some sort of criminal history. Again, you know, um, a very high risk lifestyle. But that doesn't mean that, she's still not worthy of the dignity and respect that every human being is worthy of. And, you know, people investigating why and how she disappeared. So, that's just one case that kind of was brought, kind of got me thinking a little bit more about how, you know, such a disparaging difference between um, uh, individuals and how the police and law enforcement decide to look into the circumstances of them missing and then whether that information is portrayed to the media or not. Because let's be fair here, for the most part, the media is probably not going to know a lot of details unless that information is given to them directly from the law enforcement agencies to get the word out there that people are, individuals are missing and these are the circumstances that they've gone missing under. So, and then that kind of even brings me along to talking about the disappearance of men. How, men are hardly ever talked about at all when they disappear. And, again, depending on their status within society, they are at high risk as well. So, here in Canada, we had a particular case where there was a serial killer who was targeting gay men in the Toronto area. And he got away with it for years because when the community was reporting to the police that there was, these violent men were going missing, first of all, and there were kind of repeated violent acts that were also reported to the police. They weren't taken seriously. Um, so this man, who I'm not going to name him because I will not name um, the killers here, but um, I will talk about the victims. I won't talk about their killers. Um, got away with it for years because any attempts to involve the law enforcement uh, weren't weren't taken seriously. Um, so Lex just said here, we thought the sketch of the man looked like Putin. So yeah, I know he's referring to the sketch of the man in uh, the Brittany Shank case. I don't know if there was. So yes, so the when I had the screen up there, the man that she was last seen with, there was a sketch of him at the end. Yeah, I just going back to that Brittany Shank case there for a minute, Lex. I will say I find it so strange for it being such for that area. Apparently, like that area of Sturgis, Michigan, is a pretty small community, and like even the ones surrounding it, like Three Rivers, um, is that nobody knows who this guy is. Because what I've listened to on the podcast so far, it's kind of like it's a community, an area where everybody kind of knows everybody. And even if you don't know them personally, you know who they are. So I just find it really strange that even after all of this time, nobody's been able to identify who she was last seen with. So, like I said, like there are a lot of really nefarious things I think going on in that case there, but so it's too bad that it did not get the attention that it deserved, and it's still not getting it. So, so sorry. Anyways, back. I'm skipping all over the place here. What else is new? So, okay. So again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, that it is May 5th was Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women Month here in Canada. And so I'm just going to talk about that for a short bit before I skip off into the last kind of thing I wanted to cover talking about this topic. So here in Canada, back in 2022, there was an individual who was arrested for the killing of 4 Indigenous women. And he had stated that he had disposed of their remains into the trash. And even though law enforcement knew which landfills their remains were potentially in, they refused to search the landfills for these poor women that were literally treated like garbage and disposed of like garbage. And in that case, so let's just go through the timeline of that case, of those cases, because again, more just horrific circumstances to which these women went missing. Yeah, so yeah, let me put your comment up here, Lex. Well, I mean, I think that was a big why didn't they search? Because they were indigenous. Yes, pretty much that's the reason why, Lex, they didn't search. Um, they stated that they could not. It was going to be dangerous to search the landfill. Um, Even though they probably, it sounds like from all the information I found, it sounds like they actually knew, they probably had a good idea of where to search in the landfill. But yeah, they said for months that they wouldn't search. So of course the indigenous people in, so this happened in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, and um, it was quite the effort to finally get the landfill searched. And it only happened because that province ended up electing a First Nations premier. And that's the only reason why it ended up happening, because he finally said enough is enough and we're going to do it. So I'm just going to go through the timeline here of the circumstances regarding these cases. Okay, so let me just get to the right page again here. All right. So there were 4 women that went missing um, in 2022. 3 of them, it looks like, were murdered in May of 2022, and one was murdered in um, June. Oh no, sorry. Let me correct that. One was killed in March, and 3 were killed in May of 2022. So the remains of one of the women's were found in a trash can uh, at the side of the road, basically, um, by somebody who was just looking for scrap metal, and he came across the remains, which, through investigation, did lead law enforcement to the murderer. And when he was questioned during his interrogation, he confessed to murdering 3 other women and told them that the remains were in the landfill. So they managed to find the remains of the woman that the woman that he was originally arrested for murdering, which who remains partial remains were found at the side of the road in the trash. They found the rest of her remains in the landfill about 3 weeks after her initial remains were found. But they refused to search for the remains of the other 3 missing women that he confessed to killing. So the First Nations chiefs in that area, along with the families, um, advocated daily to search the landfill for the remains so these women could be brought home. They had sacred fires outside the landfill as well, and sacred fires are held um, to honor the people that they are burned for, and also they're part of our ceremonies. So they help, to send messages to the creator, and, to help the creator uh, guide us through uh, our life and to how we should be living our lives. No, no, Lex, sorry. No, there was a man looking for scrap metal and was going through the garbage that was put out along the side of the road to be picked up. And he found partial remains of one of the missing women. And he reported it obviously to the police. And through investigations, the police were able to determine who the murderer was. So no, it was just a man who was out looking for scrap metal, going through people's garbage basically, and he found the remains, the partial remains. So if it hadn't been for this gentleman literally going through other people's garbage, and who knows how long this guy would have gotten away with killing women. He killed 4 women within like a 2-month period. Like, absolutely sickening. And they were all Indigenous women. He killed 4 Indigenous women within a 4-month period. So, okay, sorry. So back to the timeline. So in December 2022, one of the families, along with First Nations people, built a sacred fire outside the landfill, basically as a sign of protest to demand that to keep attention on this issue, and to demand that the landfill be searched for their family members. That sacred fire continued for 2 years. In May 2023, a feasibility study was released citing that it would cost $184 million and about 3 years to search the landfill for remains. And at that time, the premier of the province told the media that it was too risky to search. As another step in their protest, the families and the Indigenous leaders in that area set up a blockade as a way, again, to demand that provincial and federal governments do what they can to search the landfill for their family members. And it was at that time that the media started paying attention to these cases. So in July 2023, a judge granted an injunction for the removal of the blockade. So at that time, the sacred fires were moved to an offsite location to continue to be able to protest to search the landfill. And then in October of 2023, a new premier was elected. He was First Nations, and he implemented the landfill search. In March 2024, the search began. And then I believe that I need to skip back to another page here just to get I closed the tab, so I'm correct on the dates. But I believe that the first remains were found about a year ago. So they have found the remains of 2 of the women. There is still the remains of a third woman, but it took them about 3 months to find those remains. But they found them. They found them. So those women were able to be brought home. And, I ask, that the creator, helps them to find the remains of the third woman so she can be brought home as well. So again, like I said, until the media started bringing attention to this case, that's when it kind of became a little bit more known. And I wouldn't even say that it became like a huge national story here in Canada, because I'm sure there are a lot of people that if I talk to, they don't know anything about it. But, you know, it's just, it never should have gotten to that point. They should have immediately started searching for the remains of those women, especially knowing where they were. So, all right. And then kind of the third thing I want to talk about that's also kind of it's a current situation currently going on here within Canada right now is there are 2 missing children in Nova Scotia. And again, from what I understand, they actually are they are First Nations as well. They are Micmac. And again, there are some very strange circumstances around these children going missing. It's a very active case at the moment. But again, I don't feel like it's that I don't want to say that the law enforcement is not doing enough in this case because we don't know. Obviously, it's active right now. There are a lot of moving parts. Obviously, the concern is to find these children. They have been missing for 2 weeks now, as of today. Uh, but they don't seem to be talking enough to the media, which is allowing some speculation to grow. Now, this is just I'm gonna preface all of this by saying that talking about this actual case right now, about these two missing children, this is strictly my opinion. So these two babies that are missing, Lily and Jack Sullivan. Lily is 6 years old. Jack Sullivan is 4 years old. They were reported missing on May 2nd by their stepfather. So just over 2 weeks now they've been missing. And are missing from a remote part of Nova Scotia. They live in the woods and they are surrounded by a wooded area. Now, their backyard is fenced in. I'm going to see if I can find a picture just to give you guys an idea of what. Let me see if I can share this. Of what they look like. Of the area they went missing from. Now, I do think in this particular case, there are, I think it's this one here. Yep. Some nefarious circumstances again. So you guys can see that. So this is the trailer mobile home that they lived in that they went missing from. Let me see if it shows a picture of their backyard. These are the two little babies, gorgeous little children that have been missing now for 2 weeks. Okay, so this is kind of a, I don't know if I can zoom in, if that blows it up too much. It's hard to tell here. So this is the home here. Can you guys see my cursor? You probably can't, can you? So directly attached to the back of the home. So this is what you see here is there's cars out front. That's the front of the house. Directly attached to the back of the house is the backyard, and the backyard is completely fenced in. And apparently, according to the stepfather, the mother and the stepfather were in bed attending to their baby, and the 4-year-old and 6-year-old were out in the kitchen, and they believe that they left through the rear patio door. And they didn't know how long they had been gone because apparently the patio door is very quiet when it opens. But their backyard, it's hard to tell, I think, in that picture, but it is actually completely fenced in. Now, there might be, 4 and 6-year-old, we're talking about little ones here. They could very easily maybe sneak out through a hole in the fence or whatever. But so when they realized that the children were no longer in the house, they went out searching and called 911 when they couldn't find them, I guess, within the immediate vicinity of the home. Now here is where the strange circumstances kind of start to come in. Prior to them being reported missing on May the 2nd, which was a Friday, nobody had actually seen the children since the Tuesday. So I think that might have been April 29th or 30th, 29th, I guess. May 2nd, 1st, April 29th. So they went to the school on Tuesday. On the Wednesday, it was apparently a professional development day for teachers, so they were off school. And then Thursday and Friday, apparently the little girl was sick with a fever, and so they kept them both home from school. So, hi, Unicorn Farts. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Yes, I know, long time no see. If you go back to the beginning, I kind of explained why I've been away, but I'm going to give this content creator thing another try. So, so hope to stick around and see you in future streams. Um, so, so, so the last time they were actually physically seen was April 29th or 30th, whatever day that was. They were reported missing around 10 a.m. on May the 2nd. Sometime within the next 48 hours, I believe, the mother decides to leave the premises with the baby and go stay with other family members and apparently cuts off all contact with the stepfather. Um, so a large number of community members came out to search the woods surrounding the home. Of course, law enforcement was involved, the RCMP here in Canada. I'm sure local law enforcement as well were involved, to search as well as soon as the children were reported missing. But because the woods are so densely populated with uh, trees and bush and, you know, debris, and apparently, of course, this time of year, all kinds of bugs are coming out. Very difficult terrain to search, very difficult to train, and adults were having a really hard time making their way through the terrain. And there was no signs at all of these children. So apparently the children left the house. They had on, I believe they did have on jackets and boots, but apparently the boy was only wearing like a pull-up, so not dressed for the weather. But there has been, in the areas that have been searched, they have not found any sort of trace of children. So not apparently they left with their backpacks, no backpacks found, nothing. And I find it really hard to believe that if adults are having an extremely hard time managing this terrain, that children would be able to get very far within the terrain as well, especially young children. The stepfather has kind of made comments about there's a possibility they've been kidnapped, but law enforcement is not looking into that possibility. Law enforcement has stated they do not believe the children have been kidnapped. Um, After 5 days of searching, law enforcement uh, stopped the search basically. They did continue to do some searching of the nearby waterways. Divers were looking in the waterways for any signs of these two children, but they scaled back majorly on the search of the woods. Um, as I said, the mother left the residence uh, within 24 to 48 hours of the children disappearing and cut off all contact with the stepfather. The stepfather has said that he would uh, do a polygraph test, which are unreliable. Anyone that speaks up and says that they're willing to do a polygraph test automatically is a red flag in my mind. Um, and as I stated earlier, nobody has actually seen these children since the Tuesday prior to them disappearing. Now, according to the media, they were going to their RCMP again today, this morning. We're going to do another thorough search of the area. So they were expecting another large group of people to come out and search the area again, uh, specifically in a certain area that they had, I guess, tagged to be searched. So I don't know if that means they have now found something, but prior to me going live, I checked the news and I didn't see any update to see if they released any, if anything, and if they had come across anything. But again, when I check the kind of the news updates, the timeline of this case, there are 2 to 3 days where there are no the no updates provided by law enforcement as to the current status of the case, or even just saying, here's where we are. Uh, please take these pictures, spread them far and wide, type of thing. And again, I'm not, because this is a very, like I said, it's happening right now. Um, I'm trying not to let my biases affect my opinion on this case, because I do have strong biases against um, how these situations are portrayed, because of the way they've been portrayed in the past. So I will admit that when it comes to how cases of Indigenous people have been handled in the past, I've got very strong biases on it. Um, so I am trying to look at this through a non-biased, lens. But I just feel like two children are missing, very unusual circumstances. Again, I do think there is, unfortunately, I think what we're going to end up seeing, in this case, is we're going to end up seeing one or both of the parents responsible here, I think, in this case, unfortunately. But until that happens, there are still two babies out there that need to be found. Um, whether it is a rescue or recovery at this point, they still need to be found. Um, so, I mean, I will ask you if you can. Again, I know many of you are not in Canada, but you know, if if this is a topic you are interested in, or you feel like, how can I help? What can I do? I follow murdered and missing women, Indigenous people groups on Facebook, so you can share posts. I follow my local police department, law enforcement department, so when people go missing, I am always sharing those posts, because even if you don't know where they end up. In fact, again, another case that actually happened very locally to me, and my understanding is that this is probably a human trafficking case, but two teenage girls went missing, maybe about a month ago, from my community, and um, there were reports of they were trafficked, and so the posts were constantly being shared, and they get shared outside our community, they get shared to another community, that community starts sharing them, and these two girls were found. They were not found within our community, but they were found. And I don't know, again, if that, whether the sharing of those posts, letting people know that these two girls were missing, this is where they're from, this is where they were last seen, just spreading the word. I don't know if that had any impact, because they have no more details have been released, but it can't hurt. That's for sure. You know, so if you can, just share the posts. If you see, if there's something you ask, how can I help? What can I do? If you see missing persons posts, share them, you know. I'm not sure if there's something on Twitter, Lex. I will look into it and I will send you a message, and then I will update my video with groups that I do find. I'll put the links in the video description as well. So I'm not on Twitter very often. I'm not a fan of it anymore. I literally just go on about uh, very rarely now, just because I had to take a big break from all the political stuff that was on Twitter. Um, I had to take a big break from political stuff in general, so that's kind of why I stopped going on Twitter. I'm going to share a picture of these two babies again, so we know what they look like. So, so again, at the rare possibility that these two babies were maybe kidnapped. Doesn't look like they were, but if they were, sharing their information gets it out there. Um, so, um, so that's why I kind of named this stream. If you go missing, who will look for you? Like, do you fall into the white woman syndrome category, or do you fall into the other demographic that unfortunately is not uh, advocated for as much? So, I know where I fall in. I am First Nations. I'm the daughter of an immigrant as well. So, um, you know, I can certainly pass for a white woman. I'm not. I mean, some people, if they looked at me quickly, might think I am, but I'm not. So, but, so good question to ask yourself, if you go missing, who will look for you? Whether, certainly I'm sure your family and friends, but will they have the support they need by from the community, from law enforcement, from the media? You know, it's often by getting the information out there that these cases, are solved. So, okay, so that's kind of all I had tonight. I just wanted to talk about, like I said, I was listening to. So, if anyone is interested in that podcast talking about Brittany Shank, it is the Hide and Seek podcast. It is their season 2 and 3, I believe, that talk about the case. It's quite, like I said, the podcast I think came out 2 years ago, 2.5, I guess, maybe even possibly 3. Um, but it is so far. I'm on episode 5. It is very well done, very well done. In fact, the podcaster that is doing the investigative work sounds like he's done a better job than law enforcement ever did in looking for that young mother. So, and I do hope that her family gets closure one day. Um, but yeah, so that's all I had for tonight. Please keep these two little missing babies, Lily and Jack Sullivan, in your prayers if that's something you do, in your thoughts. Please hope they are found soon. Um, Regardless of how they are found, let's just hope they are found soon. Um, and we always hope for the best, but I'm going to leave it there tonight. Like I said, I would like to try and keep these just to about an hour. So I want to thank you guys all for coming out tonight, those of you who joined me. Those of you who watched the replay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I hope you'll bear with me while I get kind of back into the swing of things and maybe you know, get this uh, get this content creator thing on the road. Um, and and we'll think about the next topic. Any ideas for the next topic? Leave it in the comments below. I do talk about girl world stuff a little bit, but that's not going to be the primary area. I am trying to talk. I do. I will. I'll talk about a lot of issues that are ongoing in society at the moment, and put my psychological spin on them if I can. And you guys, I know I've spoken of it before. I'm a huge true crime fan, so maybe I'll focus on that for the next little bit, talking about some true crimes. So if there's any true crime things you guys want to talk about, put that in the comments as well. I'd love to see it. I'm going to, I think at this point, say that I should be able to stream at least once a week. Um, I may aim for twice, just depending on how things are going within my life. But as of right now, I'm going to leave it at once a week, and we'll see how it goes from there. All right. So it's a long weekend here in Canada. I don't know if it is in the States or anywhere else, but it is here in Canada. So I'm going to enjoy it. I have Monday off of work. So if you have a long weekend, enjoy it. If not, I will enjoy your what's left of your weekend. Hopefully the weather is nice where you are. The sun is shining. It's warming up, and I will see you guys all soon. Thanks for coming. Have a good night.